At 19, I got a pretty good job working the sales floor of a company called Circuit City, right?
Okay.
And they sold electronics, and I ended up working in the computer department. And you got paid a base pay, which was you get paid so much per hour, but then you
Okay.
also got paid commission. And
Okay.
work, back then, people were just buying computers. So I got a lot of commission. And for a 19-year-old kid coming from Nigeria, making that kind of money at that age, yeah.
How did your parents finally react when they realized you had left school or deferred school
They just kept on encouraging and reminding me, hey,
to go back?
you're supposed to be in school, yeah. So it wasn't till probably, I want to say, winter of 2000, which would be basically like, let's say fall, which would probably be like sometime August, September. So fall semester of 2000 would be when I went to school, which would be at least 3 years after arriving.
After.
And the only reason I actually decided to go to school then was because I'd become a Christian. And for whatever reason, I kept on remembering, there's a place in the Bible that says, honor your father and your mother. So this passage kept on coming to my mind, like, Ubie, you're dishonoring your parents. They sent you
Yeah.
to America to go to university and you still haven't gone. So just to silence that
Yeah.
that judgment or that conviction that I'd done something wrong, I was like, you know what? I need to go to university. And that's how I went to university.
Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode of More Than Headlines. Today, I have a returning guest, and I'll let him introduce himself before we delve into what we're going to discuss today. So,
Hi, guys. My name is Ubong Tewo. Everyone calls me Ubie. I serve as the executive director of a nonprofit called Lock United, means Learners of Christ the King United. Obviously, it's a Christian ministry. And thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here again.
first of all, today we're going to be discussing the Japa Syndrome. Is the grass really greener? So, Mr. Ubie is an American citizen, so I think you'd be the best person to tell us. So, my first question would be okay, let's start with what's your Japa story? Did you really plan to move abroad or did it just happen?
So both my parents schooled in the United States. They got scholarships much early in their lives. My dad went there for university,
Okay.
and my mom went there for high school. They did basically finish their first degree and the second degree. And my older brother and I have three siblings. So my older brother and I happened to be born there.
Okay.
A few years later, they came back to Nigeria, and I basically lived all of my life, all of my teenage years in Nigeria. And then at the age of 19, I actually grew up in the University of Calabar staff quarters, Unical staff quarters.
Really?
Yeah. Both my parents actually were, I don't know what you want to say, senior administrative staffers for the university. So I grew up on the university campus, which was a very interesting childhood. Really enjoyed it. But at that time, there were a lot of strikes,
Okay.
and cultism was at its height. It was very, very rampant, very violent. But it wasn't so much the cultism as much as it was the strikes. It felt like almost every semester or something, lecturers would go on strike. And my mom basically my dad did not want us to go to the United States. My dad actually wanted us to at least stay and finish our first degrees. But at that time, because of the strikes, my mom was like, listen, it's going to take this kid 7 to 8 years to get a 4-year degree. How
Yeah.
about you let them go? So my older brother had already left 3 years ahead of me.
Okay.
And sometime, I believe it was 97, early 97, that's when I left the country at the age of 19. Yeah.
Okay. So what was your first impression when you got to the US?
My first impression.
Because now you said you were born there. So
Yeah.
you left at what age?
Okay, so I think I came back to Nigeria probably between the ages of 2 and 3. I have no memories. I have no memories of my time in America prior to returning at 19. So I was very, very young. I've seen pictures, but yeah, I have no memory of that time. Yeah. So
Okay, so going back, what was your impression like of the place?
my first
I know
impression
that
of the
going there as a teenager, a lot of Nigerian teenagers back then,
Right.
given the fact that I think they were not me.
Yeah.
They were just seeing America on TV screens and all that. And I know I'm just imagining what the excitement would be like going back.
So I remember prior to leaving, my mom had this conversation and said, hey, Ubie, Ubie, are you sure you want to go to America? And I remember thinking,
Why wouldn't you?
the land where you can pick money from trees, where there's enough ganja to smoke, where there are enough
Oh,
girls, I was like, of course, who would ever say no to going to a place like that? So, and at that point in my life, I was all about that. So I was like, Mom, of course I want to go to America.
ganja at 19.
I'm sorry?
Ganja at 19 and girls at 19?
Yes. Yeah.
Really?
Well,
Okay. Maybe that's
no, I don't think it's very different from now. And I'm not
okay.
saying
No,
I
it's
don't.
not. It's
Yeah,
not.
I don't believe that's the case for every teenager. I think there's some kids that are out, the kids that are out there that are very, very responsible. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, at 19,
Yeah.
I was not the model 19-year-old, and that was the life I lived. So the opportunity to go to America was just an opportunity to while out, to just get really wild without the supervision of my parents or anyone I knew.
Yeah.
So of course I jumped at the opportunity to go to America. Definitely.
Okay. And by the way, I know that there are people that were younger than you that could have even been way worse than you. But
Exactly.
you know, the older generation like to fake this innocence. Like, no, in our time, the baby
It wasn't
boomers would say it was
happening,
the
right.
best.
Yeah, yeah, we
The
were the best,
millennials
yeah.
would say we were the
Yeah.
best. It keeps so.
And I think there's reason for that. I think sometimes
Yeah.
people you get older and then you look back, and one of the ways you think is best to communicate responsibility to younger people is to actually
Kind of cover up.
is to cover up, right? But I think we live in a time where transparency is what it's all about right now, right? People appreciate authenticity. People appreciate being open. So yeah, that's who I was, and I definitely don't recommend it, but yeah, that's where I was at that time in my life.
So you say you don't recommend going to the US that early?
No, I don't recommend. I don't recommend living the way I did. However, I also don't recommend going to the US that early, at least based on my experience.
Okay, why?
I think for me, I was not ready to be in a place like that and have all that kind of freedom, right? So take,
Okay.
for example, so like I said, I got to the States early 97, and my parents sent me to the States specifically to go to university. And when I got to the States, I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to take a semester off and just just party and chill and acclimate to life in America.
Yeah.
That semester off became 3 years of basically just, like I said, wilding out.
Wow.
Girls, clubbing,
I'm sure your parents are not aware.
getting high. No, they weren't aware. They weren't aware. I'm sure the stories got back to them, but they weren't aware of how bad it was. Yeah.
So you had no chaperone, nobody, like you were not under anyone.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, yes, I was. So I went from Calabar to Atlanta, Georgia,
Okay.
and stayed with family friends of my parents. Back in the day, they schooled together, so they reached out and said, "Hey, one of our, we're sending one of our kids, and they need a place to stay." And they were very, very kind. They said, "Of course, come stay with us." But in the States, parents work; they have a lot going on in their life. So it wasn't that you didn't have supervision; it was just they weren't around
Yeah.
a lot. And when they weren't around, we did what kids did.
And I think as a 19-year-old, you were already old enough to work, so they won't really.
Yeah. So I was working and making my money. So it wasn't like I was like, "Auntie, uncle, please give me
Yeah.
money. I want to go." No, it was I literally had my
Yeah.
money. And interestingly, fortunately for me, I don't think this is the norm. It may be, but at 19, I got a pretty good job working the sales floor of a company called Circuit City, right?
Okay.
And they sold electronics, and I ended up working in the computer department. And you got paid a base pay, which was you get paid so much per hour, but then you
Okay.
also got paid commission.
Okay.
And work, back then, people were just buying computers. So I got a lot of commission. And for a 19-year-old kid coming from Nigeria, making that kind of money at that age, yeah.
Were you sending money back home?
No.
Why?
No. Well,
You didn't have younger siblings.
my parents didn't need it.
No, not your parents, your
No,
younger ones.
My parents took up my younger ones, so I was just making money taking.
You not the younger, not
Yeah, so
not
no, but-
the
but
younger ones of now.
Right, and plus they were much younger. much younger. We're talking if I
And
was
two, you
19.
didn't want them to know what you were doing,
Right.
by the way. So
Exactly. And plus it's not like as if I was using the money well. It's like money, it was like I was a money pipe. It was like the money came in and
came
went
in
right
and was
out.
going out.
Yeah. So I didn't, it wasn't happening.
So how did your parents finally react when they realized you had left school or deferred school
They just kept on encouraging and reminding me, hey,
to go back?
you're supposed to be in school. Yeah. So it wasn't till, probably I want to say winter of 2000, which would be basically like, let's say fall, which would probably be like sometime August, September. So fall semester of 2000 would be when I went to school, which would be at least 3 years after arriving.
After.
And the only reason I actually decided to go to school then was because I'd become a Christian. And for whatever reason, I kept on remembering, there's a place in the Bible that says, honor your father and your mother. So this passage kept on coming to my mind, like, Ubie, you're dishonoring your parents. They sent you to America to go to university and you still haven't gone. So just to silence that that judgment or that conviction that I'd done something wrong, I was like, you know what? I need to go to university. And that's how I went to university. Yeah.
So they didn't cut off your funds?
Oh, no. My parents were not sending me funds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, my parents weren't. My parents gave me, they made sure I was set. So when I was leaving the country, they were like, hey, here's some money to get yourself settled, to take care of yourself. You'll be fine. But this should take you this should sustain you maybe a month to 3 months. After that, you need to get a job. Because, they lived there, so they knew how it was.
Yeah, they
right?
knew
So they
the
said,
system.
hey, we're gonna give you some startup money, take care of yourself so that you're not a burden to the people who are hosting you. And they said within 3 months, we expect, you should at least know enough of the system to know how to go out and get a job and things like that. And it worked out really, yeah. So
I'm imagining what the amount of money would do to a 19-year-old.
exactly. Who wasn't exactly the most responsible person. Yeah. So
Well, you had fun. I think you learned from it. So
I better have.
Yeah.
I think I did. I did. Yeah, which was basically, put things in the right order.
okay. So what was one of your biggest shock, like getting there?
I'll tell you. Okay, so the biggest shock for me on landing America was that place is white.
Oh,
Right, because like Nigeria,
white skin,
yeah,
yeah.
Nigeria is like we're the most populous black country on earth,
yeah.
right? And I think it's hard for us to even understand what that is because we're in it, it's just normal. So I left Niger, right? I think I had a layover in Amsterdam or Germany. It's been a while. I don't remember what my layover was. And then basically it's like I got into a plane and they were all black people, and then I arrived in this place and come out of the airport and literally I am filled in a sea of white, right?
Wow.
So there's literally this panic, the shock. They have a different they have an accent.
Yeah.
They speak very different. They don't necessarily speak English. They speak American. We speak more proper English.
Yeah.
So even communicating or understanding them, besides the accent, it's how we even structure our sentences. So
Did you
just
struggle with
completely
the language barrier?
Oh, absolutely.
You did?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it's number one, they have a very different accent,
Yeah.
right? So I'll give you an example. I remember the first time I had someone say, "Hey, could you pass me a wrench?" And I was like, "What is a wrench?" And the person looked at me like as if I didn't know anything. The person said, "That over there," and it was a spanner on the floor.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, you mean a spanner?" And he said, "No, the wrench." Right.
So wrench is, I'm sure, American English. Well, spanner is
Spanners,
British.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So so you had little subtleties like that, but just outside of that, it's just the accent alone. At least for me, it took me a while.
The accent is definitely. A lot of people feel that if you speak well in Nigeria, you can. No, it's not the same.
No, I don't. Yeah, not for everyone.
Because even over there, I think there are different accents.
Yes.
Different cities and all
Absolutely. And let's not forget, at least back then, right? I'd say maybe if you lived in Lagos, right? Maybe
Even Lagos.
Well, but I know. But here's the thing: we're talking maybe what 97, so almost 30 years ago, right?
Okay.
So at that time, right, the people that stayed up on things were guys who were in Lagos,
in
because the
Lagos.
magazines and all that stuff came in, and you could pick up a magazine and look at it and you see, oh, this is the fashion going on, this is the music being played, this is how people talk. Well, when you're all the way in Calabar, right, it might take about a month or two for that kind of stuff to finally get there, right? I was fortunate to be living in a place that was, I hate to use the word ritzy, but more you get the point I'm making, right? Living in the staff quarters, but still, you were in
No,
Calabar as
the
opposed
the staff
to
quarters, the
Lagos.
University of Calabar staff quarters kids were
Right.
the cool
Yeah,
kids.
that jazz and all
Yeah.
of that. I understand. But still, we're talking
Or
about
seen as the cool
exactly
kids.
right, seen as the cool kids. But then, comparing Unical staff quarters to Lagos, right?
Yeah.
I don't think
No,
there's very
there's
much
the
of a comparison. So even though you could say living in staff quarters and being exposed gave me kind of like a leg up,
yeah.
still going from Unical staff quarters all the way to Atlanta, Georgia, right, within the span of a day or two. Now there's a whole lot of assimilation and understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, took a while. Took a while.
So you said you landed in Atlanta. Atlanta is one of the, I think they have like the most blacks there. So now you saying you know,
At that
there's still
time,
a lot. Okay.
yes.
Okay, at that
At
time.
that time,
Okay.
I think, at that time, Chocolate City was Washington D.C. Right. So in the
Okay.
'90s, Washington D.C. was the place that typically, when
You'd
you
say.
talked about, a high concentration of black people,
Okay.
D.C. was known for that. I'd say maybe it's been recently, and don't take my word for it, but I'd say recently, maybe in the last 10 years, Atlanta has become
Yeah.
the mecca for black
Black
people. Yeah,
people.
but it wasn't always that way. Not saying that there haven't always been black people in Atlanta. As a matter of fact, there was a festival back in the day in Atlanta
Yeah.
called Freaknik, and
Yeah.
Freaknik was wilder than Mardi Gras, right? And most of the people that organized and came for Freaknik were black people. So Atlanta has always been a place where you find
More black
a lot
people.
of black people, but in the '90s, right, especially in the mid '90s, DC was considered more chocolate city than Atlanta. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about racial discrimination.
Oh boy. Okay, let's talk about racial discrimination. Sure.
Because, I understand the fact that we're blacks here.
Right.
I'm just imagining myself going to a place like, not even like some European countries
Right.
where, black people, I know that the race difference would be glaring.
Right.
That's why I'm one of the people that I don't think I can live outside Nigeria. I might change my mind in the future, but
I beg to
because
differ.
then again, I want to be comfortable. I like to be comfortable,
Right.
but then again, that might change.
Okay.
So, what was your first? I know that racial discrimination is a big deal.
Right. Yeah.
So, what was your first brush with it?
So I think it's really interesting. There is whether we recognize it or not, I think there's something just very powerful about being Nigerian. Right.
Okay.
I think so I'll tell you this. So growing up in Nigeria, okay, I always believed that the characteristics of Nigerian were characteristics of all black people. I did not recognize, for real. I just thought,
I can imagine.
yeah, I thought all black people on earth were like Nigerians. It wasn't until I
Wow.
left Nigeria and went to the United States that, that's a whole lot more diverse. There are a lot of
Yeah.
Africans from everywhere, right? Especially living, I lived in Atlanta for about 3 years, and then I moved from Atlanta to Washington, D.C., right? So, and in both cities, you have a high population of Africans, right? And it wasn't until I got to the States that I discovered that the traits that I used to think were traits of all Africans or all black people were particularly Nigerian traits. Take, for example, our boldness, right?
Yeah.
We're very bold. We
Very
don't
loud.
take crap. We don't take trash from anyone. I really thought that was an African trait.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I got to America and started hanging around other Africans that I realized that they were actually quiet, timid Africans. I did not know that. I thought that it was alien and
No,
strange.
it's
for an
Africa, then it's Nigeria.
no, for real.
Yeah.
It's not, so yeah, so I think that was that's one of those things that just really hit me
Okay.
when I got to the States, and started, mingling, that wow, there is something this is something that's very, not saying that there are other African countries that don't have that trait, but it's
Yeah.
very prominent in being in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So as it has to do with racism, I think, I'm not saying that that Nigerians are not negatively cannot negatively be impacted by it, but I think we handle it very well.
Better than the other African
We handle it
countries.
better than African Americans, and I think we definitely handle it better than African Americans, for good reason, for very good reason. I think, take for example in Nigeria, the ugly people are black, the good looking people are black, the dumb people are black, the smart people are black, the lazy people are black, the hardworking people are black, right?
Yeah.
So because of that, right, I now leave with that kind of a mentality. I now leave and go to America. You are not, there's no one on earth you're going to convince me that I deserve less because I'm black, right? Because I'm coming from a place where black people at the bottom, black
Yeah.
people at the in the middle, and black people at the top. So already, unconsciously, it's already been imbibed and communicated to me
Yeah.
that, hey, wherever you are in life has nothing to do with
With the
your
color of your skin.
ethnicity, or
Yeah.
right. It has to do with your go-get-itness, right? So I arrive in this country, and I'm down south at this time. I lived in a place called Stone Mountain, Georgia.
Okay.
Stone Mountain was it's a suburb of Atlanta. It's about 10 to 15 minutes outside of Atlanta, which is not far at all, right?
Okay.
But the reason I bring that up is to say that Stone Mountain is the capital of the KKK, of the
Oh.
new KKK, right? So this was not just anywhere in America. I was coming into a place where racism was very, very present, and
Yeah.
it was very visceral, very primal, but it was undercurrent. So it was like, man, you better know what side of the street you're walking on. You better know who you're talking to. You better know
Yeah.
how you're talking. That was just the way Stone Mountain was in the 1970s. And I mean, sorry, in the 90s,
90s.
right? So coming into a place like that and still being able to not allow anyone get me to buy into this idea that because I was black or because I was African, I was less. When I look back, I look back and I'm amazed that I didn't suffer more trauma, whether mental or emotional trauma, going through that experience. And I realized that the reason why is because I grew up in Nigeria,
Because yeah.
right? So no one could say to me, "Oh, because you're black, you're
Yeah.
ugly." I'm like, no, no, no. Trust me. I know fine-looking black people, and I know ugly-looking black people, and I'm not the best-looking person, but I don't think I'm ugly. Maybe you don't know a lot of black people.
You know,
Of course, respectfully, but
yeah.
yeah. So I think that there's something powerful about being around your people, being with
Yeah.
your people, right? It opens your eyes to the fact that your ethnicity or your race really has very little to do with how far you get, right? So when people try to oppress you, you just recognize, okay, I'm in a place of adversity, and I'm either going to buckle under that adversity, I'm going to either buy into the lie, or I'm going to have to push against it. And the average Nigerian, at least the Nigerians that I know abroad, typically tend to go the other way, which is they don't buckle under the pressure. They actually stand up and face the pressure. So for Nigerian, and again, speaking just from my experience, I'm not saying it's not hard because we're black. I'm just saying I think growing up in Nigeria and growing up in a culture of blackness definitely sets you up for life there, right? As opposed to the typical African American who was born there, who's lived there all their life. That person is born in a world where from birth, he's already being told,
Yeah.
he or she's already
The
being
slave
told, I
mentality.
don't deserve something because I'm black, right?
Yeah.
That's a complete, so for me, I have the greatest, no joke. I'm not saying this because it's a podcast or anything, but I've been in America now for almost 30 years, and I have my respect for African Americans continue to elevate. Because when you think about what African Americans have suffered, and then you consider where they are right now, right? It's nothing short of a miracle. Unless you're told, you probably will not notice racism. You'll probably just be wondering, oh, why is this person acting this way? Or why is this person
Okay,
talking
why
this
does
way?
this person not
It
like
won't,
me?
right. It won't dawn on you until you start getting educated, right, by people there. It won't dawn on you that it's because you're a black person. But so I think one of my first exposure to racism was actually I was actually being educated by the family I was staying with. They had let's see here, 5 kids.
Wow, that's a
5 kids,
lot.
yeah, 5 kids.
Nigerians.
Nigerians, 5 kids. And we were all about the same age, right? It's kind of like same generation, same age bracket. So we arrived there, and it may have been just a day or two. Okay, they take me out. no joke. And they say, don't forget, I told you where we live, Stone Mountain, Georgia. So they take me out, and we're walking. And as they're walking, they say, Ubie, this is the road to get to this place. Don't go right. Don't go left. When you leave the
Really?
house, when you leave the house, this is the
Sounds
road.
like appetite.
Yeah, this is the road to the bus stop. Not because you can't, but we
Okay.
want you to be safe.
Okay.
Anything could happen. So when you leave the house, this is how we go. We just go. We go this path to the bus stop. And then they said, "You see that house there?" I was like, "Yeah." They said, "That's the only house where when the person says good morning to you, they sincerely mean good morning." He said they'll invite you to come play basketball in their house. You can go play basketball in their yard. If in the summer they'll actually invite us to go use the pool, you can go use the pool. They said if any other person in this neighborhood, white, okay, this was a white neighborhood. I think it may have just been our house, our family, and another person, maybe about 2 or 3 houses from us that were black. Every other person was white. And they said if any other person in this neighborhood, besides that white family, that house right there, if any other person besides that house invites you over, do not go. If they say good morning back, but just know it's not a real good morning. It's just they're just being, it's just courtesy.
Yeah.
So that was my first exposure to racism. So my first exposure to racism wasn't necessarily an infliction of hurt, whether verbal or otherwise, as much as it was being coached on how to navigate
Yeah.
the neighborhood I lived in. Yeah.
So you've never had like any racial confrontation?
So okay, well, so when I introduced myself, I said I run the organization Lock,
Okay.
and in the States, part of what we do is work with churches, church leaders, nonprofit organizations, and businesses, just teaching them how to improve race relations and ethnic relationships within their culture and within the environment.
Okay.
And so part of what we do is we hold an annual event to improve race relationships in our city.
Okay.
Right. And this happened. This is typically something I don't typically share, but it's public knowledge now. But about 2 years ago, we were hosting one of these events called Prism and Light, and it was the last. We held it basically in the month of May, the first 4 Saturdays in May, right? So the last Saturday we have this big, huge festival. There are games, there are drinks. We have people come in and give talks. We have competitions and things like that. And at the start of the event, well, before people started coming, we were setting up. So I and a team had left the park to go pass out flyers and knock on doors to let people in the neighborhood know that, hey, we're going to be hosting this event. Well, while I was away, a number of skinheads. That's a popular term. A number of skinheads,
Okay.
basically white nationalists, people that that's the guys, the real racist guys that hey, blacks need to be separate from whites. Whites are supreme to blacks and things like that. The guys that really push this, right, to the point where they might even use force. Well, they came to the park with guns looking for me, right, and
Wow.
I was out in the neighborhood with a team passing out flyers, right? So the guy that was at the park was like, I don't know who you're looking for, and you guys are not welcome here. You guys need to leave. If you don't leave, I'm going to call the police, right? So they had left, and when I came back, so by the time we came
the
back,
guy could speak to people with guns.
now what are you going to do? It's America now.
Okay.
It's not like as if he was boldly saying, "Hey," it was
Okay,
like, "Listen,
okay.
But so I came back to the park, and there were like 4 or 5 police cars with their sirens and everything, So I come over and I'm thinking, okay, the guy, did he do something? What was wrong? Is he been arrested? So I'm going over to go check on the guy to make sure the guy's okay. And when he sees me, he's excited. He's like, "Are you okay?" Right. So I'm checking him to see if
Okay.
he's okay. And he's freaking out because he's like, obviously they know I'm around. I'm not at the park. The police are here. So he's like, "Hey, I'm glad you're okay. Some people came looking for you on your team because da 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 da." Right. So the police basically cordon, they were basically around for the rest of the event. And it was like a 4 or 5 hour event. So I would say that's probably the most
The
intense,
scariest.
yeah, the most intense, visceral experience I've had with racism.
With racism.
Yeah, but outside of that, I've had people call me boy, which in America is actually a racist term. When
Oh.
yeah, especially in the South, where a white person might call you something like that. Yeah, so minor experiences here and there. But that was the most blatant, obvious act of racism. Yeah. So
Maybe I would like to believe that maybe there have been other situations, but because you're in Nigeria and you just brush it off.
possibly, I would
Not,
not be surprised at all.
yeah.
I would not be surprised at all. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay. So people say America is the land of promise. Do you think that's still very true?
I think America is one of the lands of promise. I don't think it is the
Okay.
land of promise,
Okay.
right? Especially within the Nigerian context.
Exactly,
It's a known
especially for
yeah, for
Nigerians.
Nigerians. It's a known fact that whether for good or bad, Nigerians tend to flourish wherever they go,
Yeah.
right? So it's no mistake that you see you see Nigerians leave Nigeria. At this point, I think Nigerians may be the most successful immigrants in America and the UK, if not the most,
Europe.
I'm sure top two or top three most successful immigrants in this country. So if a Nigeria goes to America and they do very well, then for them, America has become the land of promise.
Yeah.
But the same is true for Canada, right? The Nigerians, I think I was just watching a reel of a Nigerian who started farming, right? And the guy, they plant cassava and they're
In
harvesting
Canada.
in Canada. The mass producing this, he started a association, a black farmers association. This is a Nigerian that left Nigeria, has gone to cold Canada, right, and is actually mobilized black people, teaching them how to farm and how, that. So for him, guess what? Canada is the land of promise.
If somebody had told him that he'll plant cassava in Canada, he wouldn't
And
have
he would no, no,
believed.
no, he would not. Right, he would not. And
He would have
somehow,
believed.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
really interesting. Somehow the guy was able to replicate
Yeah.
the soil back home in Canada that's conducive for the growth of products that typically would not grow in Canada, right? So for him, Canada is the promised land.
Yeah.
I've heard of Nigerians in India who are doing pretty well. Well, guess what? For them, India is the promised land,
Yeah.
right? So I think absolutely, absolutely, the grass is greener in the case of America and other countries. I guess I hate to use the word developed countries, but in terms of, in the case of those countries that we consider that are called developed countries, I would say absolutely the grass is greener, but it's not just in America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like you said, you were watching a reel. So recently, I was watching a YouTube video,
Okay.
and I saw Nigerians in Canada that are homeless.
Right.
And in as much as
Yeah.
there's the good part, there's also the bad part of
Yeah.
jackpine, and a lot of people don't take that bad part into consideration. So, for example, there's this guy. I think he was all over social media. He's a sickle cell patient.
Right.
Then his mom sent him to Canada, and he went into
Yeah.
Canada. After a couple of months, he was lonely, no friend, no nothing. He started doing drugs, and before you knew what happened, he was homeless. He was
Yeah.
actually looking very sick, and
Okay.
people were actually asking for donations for him on social media. A lot of people also believe that just sell all you might do it might work for some people, it might not work. It's just like your own situation. You were lucky because you had people.
Right.
And maybe you also had patient people.
Yeah.
Because I've seen situations where people go, they'll accept, he can come, he can stay with us. After a couple of months, they're like, no, you can't, be here, especially with, you drop. Imagine if you had left school and they said, okay, you came here to attend school. If you're not going to school,
Get out of my house.
Get out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people don't take the downsides into consideration. Even like now, that's even one of the things that's been most talked about right now. If you cannot keep up with, say, at least first 5 months,
Okay.
checking in on your child. In fact, don't even send your teenage child to a country where you can't visit at any time.
I think that's a luxury.
It's luxury, but then the times are changing. We now have a lot of homeless. It's now like it's not like because a lot of Nigerians recently have been moving to Canada.
Right.
And the cold.
Yeah.
It's not funny.
Yeah, but still, I think there's a reason why people are leaving Nigeria and going to these places despite. So, okay, do you know what chemotherapy is? Right?
Yes.
You have cancer. It's a very, very aggressive treatment, right? Okay. So you know the destruction that chemo does to the body, right? But
You have to
and you're
go
aware
through
of the
it.
side effects.
Yeah.
So you can choose to either die of cancer, right?
Or
Or
try.
suffer the intense pain and discomfort of chemo in the hope that
That you
you
get
will
better.
get better, right? I
Yeah.
think, in a sense, when you talk about people going to the States or going to Canada or going to Europe and, struggling like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the choice. It's,
Mm-hmm.
hey, it's kind of like a chemo. I can either stay here,
Mm-hmm.
right? And of course, at this point, they believe they have no prospects, because for someone to take all their property, their car, their house, their everything, sell, get money, and then take that money to go to another land, for someone to get to that point, they don't believe they have any more prospects where they are.
No, I
Right?
feel some people do not actually know the true situation of things when they make such decisions.
It's
Hold
a
on.
lie. They
Because
know.
there are a lot
There are
of
enough
Nigerians
no.
that, no.
Okay, there are enough documentaries. There are enough
There are a lot
reels.
of
There are enough
stranded
articles.
Nigerians in Canada,
They
in
know.
America,
They
because
know.
they sold and they regret selling everything. Some
I
of them
am
were doing better in
I
Nigeria.
am not going to say that all of them do not know, but I will say that the majority
They don't know.
no, okay, let's do it this way. Do you agree that the majority of Nigerians leaving the shores of Nigeria to go to a so-called greener pasture have heard those stories of difficulty? The majority.
There's something about Nigerians where, like, that's also probably one of the things that help them thrive
Right.
in all these countries. Regardless of
It's hope.
regardless of the racial discrimination and stuff, it's always like, it's not me. It cannot happen to me.
Yes.
It's not my portion.
That's called hope.
But until it becomes your portion, then your eyes will open.
Okay, so you do agree then that the majority of people leaving the shores of Nigeria to go to these countries have heard the stories, but they don't believe that will be their portion.
Of course.
Exactly. So the majority know, and they do succeed. They may not have the biggest house, they may not have the nicest car, but by any standard, right, a sizable number of Nigerians who leave this country and go abroad succeed.
How about the ones that go abroad and regret going? There's something called, in as much as we have Japa, there's now
Right.
Japa that you return.
There's,
You have gone there, you have seen hell,
There's Japa reverse edition.
and you're reversing back.
Yeah.
So
There's nothing wrong with that.
there's nothing wrong with that. But then again, you see people who will,
Let me tell you
spend
this.
all
Okay.
their life savings.
Let me tell you about my reverse Japa experience, because I really did have one.
You did?
Joke. Yes, I did. I did. So, arrived the States in 97, and within a few months got a job. Okay, this
Okay.
was my first job ever.
The one you did well,
Work
the
in
one that's
America.
paying you well.
This was kind of like a temporary job. Okay, it
Okay.
wasn't like my steady job. It was my first exposure to actually working in America. My
Okay.
first job. Okay, it was in a factory. Before this, the only work I'd ever done in my life, was Labor Day, FGC Maiduguri, and FGC Port Harcourt. That was the only kind of work I'd ever done in my life. So this job was in a factory, packaging boxes, and we worked for 8 hours a day. Okay, It was on a Saturday. I think it was on a Friday. No joke. These guys woke me up as early as 6 a.m. We left. No, they didn't wake me up as early as 6 a.m. We left the house at 6 a.m.
Wow.
Got to work like 6:30. Worked from about 6:30 to about 4:30 p.m. just packaging these boxes. I got home. I had never worked a day like that in my life. Literally, I think, okay, so they drove. I was in the car. I slept in the car. Got home. I don't know how I got from the car to my bed, but I did not wake
They
up.
didn't lift you.
For real, I did not wake up till about 7 p.m. Saturday. Okay.
Wow. That
And
means you didn't go to work on Saturday.
I didn't go to no, I didn't go back. I was like, what kind of rubbish? She said, I'm not doing that. And no, that's why I said, that's why I'm like, that really wasn't even my first job. It was an experiment. I was like, God forbid, I'm not going back. But for real, like, everything in me was like, yo, you still have this money. Go and buy your ticket and go back home. It was very real. Very
Really?
real. Yes. I was, no joke, I was this close to buy my ticket and going back. Do you know why I didn't?
Why?
I was like, Ubie, see your guys go Yabu. Then go talk, say, as you
After
go
you don't
Yankee.
brag,
Yes,
say
you don't enter Yankee, you know fit survive. That was what kept me back. No joke. Because my parents had said to me, Ubi, if you get there and you don't like it, or you can't cut, or you can't make it, come back home.
Okay.
And then my parents would have been very happy to have me back. Very happy. It wouldn't have been an issue at all. But for real, no joke, I came because I was like, these people told me. Not like anyone told me, but I was like, these people told me that I'll be plucking money from trees. I've not seen one tree that has $1 on it. You understand?
If you had tried it till this day, you would be the example.
I probably would.
That one that went to America and came back. See his life now.
I probably would. But also, okay, you're talking about this struggling Nigerians. I was a weed head.
Okay.
Right.
Did you start in Nigeria? You started
in Nigeria. When I got there, you could multiply it by 20. I'm not exaggerating.
Because of the weather, I'm sure.
No, when I say I was a weed, I mean I used to smoke Ikonepo.
I know what you mean.
Smoking a ton of it, right?
Yeah. I know people get into it seriously over there, maybe because of the weather or something.
No, just because. Well, for me, it was
just the freedom.
My papa know they here, my mama know they here. Nobody knows me. The things I was doing in Nigeria.
Were your parents strict?
Huh?
Were your parents strict?
My parents are amazing parents. There were no stricter than was necessary. They were not like that. No. But it was just I was in a place where I was free.
Had good home training. You knew things to not do. Yes,
I think I had great home training. As a matter of fact, I think it's because of my home training that I turned out the way I am. Not like as if I'm perfect at all. I have a whole lot of skeletons in my cupboard. Please don't go looking. Okay, I'm not perfect at all. But no, my great home training.
We all have.
Was homeless at one point in my life. There was a period where I was actually homeless. When I lived in DC, I had some friends who were college students, some Ghanaian friends who were college students, and they lived in the dormitory of Howard University, where there were certain evenings where it would get cold. They say, "Ubie, come stay with us," right? Know what homelessness is. But that's not that's not my story today. The point I'm making is, yes, there may be Nigerians who may be in very difficult straits, who may be in horrible circumstances. However, right, even the story is the same here. That is, I think we want to be careful not to say or not to talk about them as though that is the end of their story. Mm-hmm. I think the average Nigerian who goes abroad typically will remember where he's from. And wherever they end up, I'm not saying that there's some who do not recover ever. I know of some stories because of the work that I do. But the average, it's important to keep in mind that that's not the end of their story. That just because they're going through a very bad season, horrible season, however long the season may be, does not mean they're not going to make it through. Right? Yeah. Because that drive, that spirit of that adventurer that drives someone to leave home, cross the Atlantic Ocean, and search for opportunity, that spirit of the adventurer is still in them, regardless of what they're suffering at that time. Right? So I think, I think it's very important that those people struggling keep that in mind, and that that they keep that in mind, that we remember that, hey, their story is still being written. Yeah.
I think that's one thing I admire about the Nigerian spirit. There's always that I will make
perseverance.
I
will
blow one day. Yeah. I will blow one day. I have to keep pushing.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just the right person showing up and giving you the opportunity you need. Something as simple as that. Yeah.
Yeah. And with opportunity, then again, you have to be consistent.
Right.
If you're not consistent, the opportunity might come knocking and you're not ready, and it will just pass you by. But then again, I want to ask about, you said at some point you were homeless. Yeah. So there could be somebody out there watching, listening. So how did that happen? How did you get out of it?
I just remembered who I was.
No.
I'm being for real.
There must have been a level of carelessness.
No, I promise you, right?
Because I know it's something like this that makes somebody homeless in America.
Yeah, it could be as simple as
you couldn't pay 1 month rent.
Exactly, 1 month rent. But see, the difference is, if you're homeless, you can go to a homeless shelter.
Was that when you lost your? Did you lose your job as the floor salesperson or manager?
Oh no. This was when I lived in Washington D.C. Okay. And when I say I was homeless, I mean for like maybe a week or two.
How did you? I know that homelessness.
Even less than that. Not it wasn't this extended period. But the point I was making was, no, even I, right, can relate to some degree to those people, and that because of my experience, when I hear of encounters like that, I always remind myself, hey, their story, just like yours, is still being written. Yeah. I could have chosen to give up because I was in a week to 2 week season of homelessness, not having a place to stay. I could really have given up and said, this is my lot, this is who I am, but I didn't, right? So I remind myself the same way, hey, Ubi, just like you went through that season in your life, they could be going through a season in their life, right? Yeah.
But another thing is that that's the part that most people don't talk about, that homelessness. Because I know someone, like, I know someone who mentioned to me, somebody that I know mentioned, in Nigeria now, just post picture with one maybe cup of coffee or something.
Right.
You're enjoying. Hey,
But you guys think way better things than we do.
You're balling in America. See the white people in the background. See the,
Right,
all that
right.
stuff. But people don't know that there's something called homelessness.
Homelessness, yeah. It's very real.
And I think in Nigeria, that's just the beautiful thing about Nigeria. In Nigeria, we thrive as a community.
As a community, exactly.
If you're not doing okay, you can go to your auntie's house.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I know over there, your auntie will kick you out.
Your auntie could kick you out, or your auntie would say pay rent, right?
Wow.
But of course, we're talking about Nigerian families. That same Nigerian ethos and that same Nigerian mindset exists there, where if you're Nigerian and you're struggling, and you have family there, they'll support you. As a matter of fact, if you're Nigerian and Nigerians know that you're in Nigeria and you're struggling, they'll help you. Typically, what happens is, at least in my experience, speaking for myself, what I've found is Nigerians who are struggling, like really struggling, right? That a lot of times they remain in that position because they are ashamed of reaching out to Nigerians.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're struggling and you're ashamed of reaching out to Nigerian, you'll remain in that situation. I know of some people who will actually hide that they're Nigerians from Nigerians because they cannot stand to be seen struggling. Right. Yeah. But the reality is the same here. If you need help, or if you're in straits, if you don't seek help, you won't get help. Right. But if you seek help, you find help.
A closed mouth is a closed destiny.
You don't talk them now.
And apart from even that, so if you're into drugs, of course, nobody wants to help you, because that's like... No, because I know that a lot of the homeless, like, not a lot.
They have rehab programs.
They have like people who are doing drugs and they're homeless. Nigerians will be very careful. They don't want you to come into their home with that.
Absolutely, yes.
But if you are clean,
for sure,
yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
So I know that we had a conversation and you mentioned that you have an American passport.
Correct, yes.
So what are the perks for those of us that might be looking to get these passports by hook or by crook?
I love the fact that when I travel with my American passport and there's a layover, I can leave the airport, explore the city, and come back. Whereas if I had a Nigerian passport, I would have to wait in the airport. I wouldn't be able to leave. So I love that. I love the fact that I can travel to more countries and get visas either on arrival or just get stamped. I love that. I think access to jobs in the US, right? Being a citizen, or, if you had a green card, but in my case, being a citizen, having a blue passport, I think that's definitely a perk. So for me, those would be the perks. A frustration, I guess, would be the fact that when I come back home to Nigeria, I'm treated like an American.
Of course.
And then when I go back to the States, I'm treated like a Nigerian. So I come to Nigeria and people tell me, dude, you have an American accent. And then I go, or you have some kind of an accent that is not Nigerian. Okay. And then when I go to the States, I'm told, dude, you have some kind of an accent that's not American.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So it's kind of like, so that it's not a major thing.
Are you one of the lost ones?
You know what? It's interesting because I may be. It's interesting that when I visit home, when I say home, I mean you. Yeah. That when I visit home on Niger, that I say to myself, man, it's so good to be home. And after a few weeks, in my head, or even unconsciously, I'm like, man, I miss home, right? Oh. But I've lived more of my life now in the States than I have in Nigeria, even though I come back frequently. That coming back home frequently, coming back home, and when I say home, coming back to Nigeria keeps me grounded, right? But yeah, so that that's so if you want to call it lost, I'm like, hey, yeah, I don't feel lost. It's just interesting. As a matter of fact, I would say I consider it an advantage, the ability, because I now have the ability to identify with two cultures
Okay.
and to identify very comfortably with either culture.
Would you give it away for your green passport?
Would I give my American passport away for my
Yeah.
green passport?
Yeah.
You mean if I had to choose
Yes,
between?
if you had to choose.
No.
You would not? But I said you're a proud Nigerian.
I'm a very proud Nigerian, but my being okay. Thinking pragmatically, my being a Nigerian has nothing to do with having a green passport. I didn't actually get my Nigerian passport till I had to travel.
Okay.
Right. The first few after leaving Niger for the States, okay. The very first time I came back to Nigeria was maybe I want to say at least 6 to 7 years later. I came back with my blue passport. I didn't have a Nigerian passport. I went back and forth maybe about 3 or 4 more times before one. Let me tell you how and
I was
why.
even about to ask you a question.
Let me tell you why I decided to get my Nigerian passport. There was a trip I was going on, okay, coming back home to Niger. So I had to go to the embassy in Atlanta. And I know some of you guys may have heard the stories, right? I had to go to the embassy in Atlanta to get my visa. Okay. And the lady at the desk was a Filipino lady questioning me. So I, a Nigerian, I'm coming to the Nigerian embassy to get my Nigerian passport. And a Filipino lady is working for the Nigerian embassy questioning me about my Nigerian nationality. That was it. I've heard the stories about the long waiting time and how that I didn't experience any of that. I know it happens. I just didn't experience it. But what frustrated me was the fact that you could see my name, Ubong Tewo. I'm a Nigerian. My passport has, I'm showing my birth certificate with my parents' names, and you're asking me these questions. I said never again. I said I will never have a non-Nigerian, right?
But I don't think she knew any better. She was just doing her job.
No, exactly. No, I wasn't offended at her.
Okay.
I was offended at the situation. The fact that a non-Nigerian was in the Nigerian embassy walking me through the process.
Okay.
Like basically vetting me. So she could have been married to a Nigerian for all I know. I don't know. But what just really hit me was the fact that a non-Nigerian was in the Nigerian embassy determining whether I could go back home or not. So I got to Nigeria, and on that trip, I got my Nigerian passport.
So how did
But before I got my Nigerian passport, guess what? I was a Nigerian. So can I give up that passport? Absolutely, I'll give it up and still be a Nigerian.
So how did you get your American passport? Because you went to America with a Nigerian passport.
No, I went to America with my American passport.
Okay, okay.
Obviously I was born there.
Okay.
So, when it was determined that yes, Ubie can go back to the States, we went to the American embassy in Lagos and went through all of that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's this tweet a couple of years back that got Nigerians riled up, including myself. So this guy, he's a Nigerian with his American passport, probably went to get a visa to come to Nigeria, and he's angry that the visa application fee is expensive. We're like, do you want to come or you don't want to come? Okay. If you don't want to come, stay over there. You want to come for dirty December, pay the visa fee. You want to use American passport so that when you come, you don't oppress us. If you want to come, pay. If you don't want to come, please stay over there. Like the comments were funny, but then again, we don't complain about the American visa fees. We don't.
Okay.
So why are you complaining about the Nigerian one? So you think we should no. So if you're going to use the American passport, get ready to pay visa fee.
I can agree with that. But yeah, I can agree with that.
Do you use your do you use your Nigerian? I know you do. I shouldn't even ask it. That thing you guys do, that when you're coming into Nigeria, you bring your Nigerian passport. The way you're going, why?
Because I don't want to pay I don't want to pay the exorbitant visa fee to come in with my American passport.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And I'm comfortable enough in Nigeria to where, I can claim at any point in time I'm a Nigerian. I don't need to brandish my blue passport to get around or to have doors open when I'm in Nigeria. When I started coming initially, I felt, as a matter of fact, I'm not going to say I felt like I did. I did.
Why?
Because I wasn't familiar with, I wasn't familiar with the culture anymore. I wasn't familiar with how things were done. But after coming, I come I come frequently. But after coming, it was like riding a bike. After coming back so many times, it comes back to you, how we think, how we talk, how we approach people. So, so at this point, I come in with my Nigerian passport, my American passport disappears and does not reappear till I'm trying to get back into the States.
Okay, so what would be your advice to Nigerians that want to go your route? I know now it's difficult to, they no longer, I don't know if they still give Nigerian
Right.
scholarships as easily
As
as
they
they
used to,
did,
right.
back then.
Right.
So would you advise, with all your experiences,
Yes, I beg, come. Yes,
so that will
it's
now come
difficult in this country. Come. If you can get out, get out. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, absolutely. The level of corruption, the hardship, what people are going
yeah.
through, and I see it
But
because of
there's
the work I
corruption in
do.
America as well.
I'm sorry, it doesn't compare at all.
I know, but
I'll tell you
you cannot
this.
say there's no corruption.
I'm not. No,
Even
no.
the
Oh, no,
racial
no, no, no,
discrimination is
no. I
crazy.
listen. I would not say that. I would never say that. There's a lot of corruption in America. A lot. But I'm not even making a comparison in corruption. I'm making a comparison in hardship.
Okay, yeah.
Things are very difficult in Nigeria. I know that because of the work I do here, because of, my friends, we sit down, we talk, I hear stories, I see things. It's difficult. If you can get out, get out. If you can get out, make the best of it. I don't think, of course, do your studies, do your research, ask people that are based in the States, when they come, talk with them, learn as much as you can. But absolutely, if you can get out, if you can leave Nigeria, leave Nigeria. Let's be clear. I don't believe, I don't like it when I hear people say that Nigerian leadership is corrupt. I feel like when people say the Nigerian leadership is corrupt, that they're actually looking at themselves. The truth is Nigerians are corrupt, including myself. We are corrupt. So I'm
Yeah.
like, let's stop blaming
The
the
leadership
leadership.
only.
But the truth is, at the end of the day, even though all of Nigerians, in general, we're corrupt people, that the people that can change it are those in leadership, right?
Yes.
It's not saying that all leaders are corrupt and we are not. It's saying the people that can change it are in leadership. But since the leaders are not changing things, as far as I know, if you can get out and come to a system, come to a place where there's a system in place where there are checks and balances that that do a pretty good job of
Yeah.
restraining the level of corruption. Not saying it doesn't exist, because it definitely exists, but it's not as blatant as it is here. So yeah, if you can get out, get out.
Last question.
Yeah,
Are you coming back to Nigeria
I want
in
to.
your old age? There's that a lot of Nigerians abroad,
Yeah.
they know that okay, at a certain age they will come back home and spend the rest of their days in Nigeria. Or are you part of the people that are like, I don't really care, this country has been good to me.
2025, Shay, this is 2025. So 12 years ago, my family and I, we had emptied our house. All our furniture was put in a container. We had bought things, put it in a container. The container was being shipped to Nigeria.
You were supposed to come back?
Yes, we were not
Jakpada.
supposed. We were coming back to Nigeria.
Okay.
We were actually in the process of building an orphanage here in Uyo.
Okay.
Because I don't know what the research is right now, but about 12 years ago, based on United Nations research, Akwa Ibom State specifically was facing, the language use was facing an orphan crisis.
Okay.
So we were actually going to come back. This is a story I don't tell a lot, and I'm not going to go into the details, but let's just put it this way. All the money that we had raised for the building of that orphanage, somehow, I'm not going to go into details, not going to blame anyone, the orphanage did not get built.
Really?
Yes, it's still uncompleted. As a result, everything in that container, including, like when I say our house was empty, it was empty. Everything in that container we sent to an orphanage in Uganda. And that orphanage in Uganda is thriving right now, right? And because of that, we had to cancel our plans to come back home. So, yeah, my family, we were going to come back home. I was extremely excited about it.
I have so many questions to ask, but I won't ask because it looks like it's a very touchy issue.
Well, let's just say it's sensitive, right? There are too many people involved and stuff out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really I was extremely excited.
But were you not aware of, because then again, social media, there's stories of people that would send money to their brother or sister to build a house.
Guess what?
And you come back and you will not even see the land.
Listen, at least in my case, the land is there. The building is well, at this point it's crumbled a little, But yeah, you heard the stories, and I thought I had put in some pretty solid mechanisms to ensure that didn't happen, but it happened anyway, right? I'm the better for it. So the work I do in Nigeria now, I do a lot of that. learning, right? I have this experience I can draw from, like, okay, hey,
Yeah.
Ubie, this is how you do it. Remember what happened this time. So you need to check, you need to check again, you need to check again, and you need to check again. You need to, all of that. So so in a lot of ways, seriously, I thank God for it, because if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't walk in Nigeria the way I walk now. So I'm
Okay.
very, very glad that it happened. I think the most damage it caused was just the fact that I was really excited that I would get to raise my kids in Nigeria. And as a result of that experience, I haven't. So if someone said, hey, what's your deepest regret from that experience? I'd say it just that. The money, I'm like, hey, money will come.
Yeah.
Money will come and go. People are going to trick you. People are going to make a fool of you. That's fine. You only get wiser if you're a wise person. So no, yeah, but yeah, would I right now, ideally, my plan is I probably have about, let's see, maybe another 17 years, but my plan is maybe my mid to late 60s to spend the 6 cold months in Yankee in Nigeria.
Okay.
So October,
6.
November, December, January,
Okay,
February, March,
okay.
and then the 6 warm months there.
Okay.
That would be my plan. That would be my dream if I could do that. 6 months here, 6 months there, back
So
and
your
forth.
your kids are not coming back.
I have told what I want for my kids, and what I've transmitted to them verbally and otherwise is I want you guys to come home as much as you can.
Here now.
Yeah, come. I don't know about that.
No,
I don't know
they're
about
private
that.
unis.
Okay, private uni, yeah.
Private unis.
But
Great
yeah.
experience.
So, well, I'm married to a white woman, so
Okay.
my kids are, my kids are very
American.
are very American. The one thing that they have that's Nigerian, they have their names. Their names are very Nigerian, and I did that. Well, I shouldn't just say we did that intentionally so that my kids would always know, hey,
This is where
I'm from somewhere else too.
Yeah.
And their names are very, in my opinion, their names are very beautiful. They're very powerful. So it doesn't just speak to where they're from, but it also gives them a sense of purpose and drive, and say, hey, I need to live out what my name is. And that's, so that's my hope. But yeah. So I've said to my kids, hey, I want you guys to visit frequently. I want you guys to invest. That's something that I've communicated to them. I want you guys to invest
in Nigeria.
Not just financially. I want you guys to invest your lives, whatever that may mean for you when you're an adult. But I don't want you to just forget where you're from. I want you to come. I want you to assimilate, be a part, enjoy it, and who knows, right? I think there's a way we talk about things. There's nothing that says 20 years from today Americans will not be jackpot into Nigeria. There's nothing that says that. Exactly.
Maybe
right.
by then they'll be looking for the green passport.
No, for real. We can think that we can think that stuff is crazy, but it can really happen, right?
But a lot of Americans, like the African Americans, are trying to come back.
Yeah, to come here. Yeah, absolutely. Because for real, there's something about coming home that recenters you.
Being
right?
where
yeah.
You don't feel different.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I can't remember where I heard someone say, but it's kind of like you take a tree, right? You take a tree from where it's originally planted, you plant it in another soil, right? It's not going to thrive as well as where it was originally. So that's what I mean when I say, at least for me, and I think for most Nigerians, coming home recenters you. It gives you this sense of, it just reminds you and centers you on who you are, what you're supposed to be doing, and it keeps you about business. Yeah.
So. And I think for the people that would really enjoy, the dual citizenship thing are people like you, where you come home, you're most times here.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're like one in, one leg in, one leg out. Yeah. So you're unlike the people that have the dual citizenship thing, but
I mean, our food is better. Our food is better by
far. Tell them. But anyway, they know.
Yeah, our food is by far better. Our culture is, in my opinion, so much richer. Despite how we struggle, we just do life so much better. So if you have the opportunity to be based there, but to come home, I'm like, yo, you definitely need to do it. You definitely need to do it. I wouldn't trade. I would never want to trade the opportunity to visit Nigeria and be here for some time. So yeah, I think I could say I'm living my dream.
There's
Yeah.
certain things I would like to say about that, but I'll not say
Yeah.
on this podcast.
Okay.
The reason you people
I-
really enjoy coming home.
I don't know what anyone's. I can tell you this much.
The
I don't know.
reason you
I do
guys
not
really
know-
enjoy coming
No lie,
home.
No lie. Listen, I don't know any other person's reason. I can only speak to myself. My reason. I come for the food. I come for. Well, first I
Okay.
come for my family and friends.
Okay.
Then I come for the food. Then I come for the culture and just the way we live. That's why I come.
Okay.
I wasn't here, just to be clear, I wasn't here for Dirty December. As a matter of fact, but the last time I came,
Wait.
I was here in December, but I left before Christmas.
Okay, yes.
I left about.
But 30 December is not Christmas.
Okay.
30 December is the days and weeks that
the
precede.
leading up
yeah.
to. Okay, so maybe
So you were
maybe I
here
touched
for-
some of it a little
yes.
bit. Okay, so I was here. Let's put it this way: I wasn't here for Dirty December. I was here during some of Dirty December. So I don't know
Okay.
I don't know what other reasons people come to Niger, but
We're not going
those
to
are my
go into
reasons.
that.
I want to hear them later, though, for sure, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Ubie, for coming. Happy to have you again.
Thanks for having me.
Thank
It's
you for
always a
sharing
pleasure,
your
Kate.
experience with us.
Thanks,
and I
guys.
hope you come back again.
I would love to be back again. Absolutely.
Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this episode with your friends. And see you on our next episode. Bye.